It was June 12, 1944, and Officer Andrew Mynarski manned the mid-upper turret of Lancaster KB 726. The night sky over northern France was alive with danger. More than 600 Allied bombers were on a mission, each heading toward their assigned targets. Ahead, searchlights suddenly cut through the darkness, sweeping across the sky and highlighting enemy aircraft. Their beams snapped and danced across the bombers below, making them easy prey for lurking night fighters. Mynarski's eyes followed the shimmering beams. Poor devils, he thought grimly, as other Lancasters ignited in flames below him. Inside KB 726, 22-year-old pilot Arthur DeBrain kept his hand steady on the controls. "Get ready, boys," he warned, his voice firm but calm. "Looks like fighters, thankfully no flak yet." His reassurance barely echoed through the fuselage before a flash erupted near the tail. 22-year-old tail gunner Pat Brophy shouted, "Light flak below, skipper." Blooms of fire detonated just beneath the Lancaster, jolting the crew. Moments later, the searchlights found them. Powerful beams seared through the night, blinding most of the crew. "Hang on, we're coned," DeBrain barked as he threw the Lancaster into a violent corkscrew maneuver. The aircraft twisted and dipped, every fiber of the crew bracing against the G-forces. Mynarski gripped the turret tightly as KB 726 lurched through the turn, finally pulling up through the clouds. They had escaped the searchlights, or so they thought. The Germans, experienced and cunning, turned off the lights once their prey was spotted. From the shadows of the rear sky, a Ju-88 approached. Brophy's night vision was just returning when he saw the unmistakable silhouette of the twin-engine German fighter. "Bogey astern, 6 o'clock," he yelled. "Hold on, men," DeBrain barked, twisting the Lancaster into another corkscrew. Brophy swung his turret, trying desperately to track the Ju-88, but the night predator slipped from view. "I lost it," he muttered. "Keep scanning, eyes open, everyone." Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, Brophy spotted movement beneath the Lancaster. A Ju-88 night fighter was coming up from below. He swung the turret and fired. Tracers hissed through the night, streaking toward the German craft. But the Ju-88 was designed for this. Its forward-firing cannons could strike from underneath, outside the Lancaster's defensive arcs. Brophy's rounds passed harmlessly overhead. The Ju-88 unleashed its own fire, shells ripping into the left wing. Mynarski saw the 20 shells tear through the fuselage, destroying the engines and puncturing the fuel tank. A fireball erupted, consuming the aircraft from the inside. Explosive rounds tore into the fuselage, shredding wires and bursting hydraulic lines. Oil sprayed across the cabin and a single spark ignited it. Flames licked the interior, consuming everything in their path. The gauges went dark. KB 726 yawned toward disaster, engines fighting a losing battle. "We're hit, losing port engines," DeBrain shouted, struggling with the controls as the bomber threatened to tumble. The altimeter was useless. Low altitude left no margin for error. "Bail out, fast," he signaled the crew in the turrets to prepare. At the rear, Brophy's intercom remained dead. He called out repeatedly, "Skipper, skipper, can you hear me? Anyone?" No answer came from his friend Mynarski. The heat from the inferno inside the fuselage intensified. Flames crept toward Brophy's hanging parachute. He pressed the turret's rotation pedal, but nothing responded. Don't panic," he muttered, calculating his next move. To exit the turret, the doors needed alignment with the fuselage, but the flames were closing in. Brophy had no choice. His parachute hung out of reach in the main fuselage. With a surge of courage, he pushed one of the doors open and grabbed the chute, pulling it quickly into the turret. Time was running out. Without hydraulics, the turret could only be moved manually using a hand crank. Brophy cranked as fast as possible, but it snapped in his hands. He was trapped. Above him, Mynarski dropped from the top turret and clipped on his parachute. He rushed to the escape hatch and glanced back at Brophy. Flames licked the rear of the Lancaster and Brophy was struggling. Without hesitation, Mynarski grabbed an axe and crawled through the burning tail structure. Heat seared through his flight suit, igniting his clothing, but he pressed on. Brophy, pulling at the doors, saw Mynarski approaching through the inferno. "Andy, don't try," he yelled, waving him off. But Mynarski ignored him, shoving the axe into the gap and straining to pry the turret open. Nothing budged. He dropped the axe and pulled with bare hands, the turret creaking painfully. Slowly it began to turn, but the gap was far too narrow. Mynarski's legs were engulfed in flames. "Andy," Brophy shouted, horrified. Despite unbearable pain, Mynarski forced himself forward. Two men locked eyes, the weight of friendship and duty heavier than the flames. Mynarski rose, saluted his friend, and shouted words drowned by fire and wind. "Good night, sir." Then he leapt into the dark. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew escaped. DeBrain, exhausted, watched them jump. Once they cleared the bomber, he throttled back the surviving engines, feeling the tension ease. Without asymmetric thrust, the Lancaster flew straight but was still descending with a full bomb load. He dashed to the escape hatch and jumped, parachute deploying safely. Yet Brophy remained, trapped in his turret. He prayed not for himself but for Mynarski and the crew. "Hail Mary, full of grace, I hope Andy got down okay. Pray for us sinners." The Lancaster drifted lower. Brophy knew the end was near. Mynarski's parachute caught fire as he fell. Lines snapped one by one. The canopy collapsed partially, sending him spiraling toward the forest below. The Lancaster's left wing clipped a tree, twisting violently. The rear turret tore off, flinging Brophy out. He landed amidst the trees, alive but battered. The forest was eerily quiet. Brophy tested his limbs cautiously, then stood, trembling. Behind him, the Lancaster burned, a twisted inferno of metal and flame. He had survived, but he was deep in enemy territory. Acting quickly, he destroyed anything unnecessary to hide his presence. French resistance fighters later found him, helping him evade capture until Allied forces arrived 2.5 months later. Brophy only learned of Mynarski's death months later. The grief and survivor's guilt haunted him. He dedicated himself to sharing the story of his friend's final, heroic act. For his bravery, Andrew Mynarski was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross. This story is just one of many of courage in Lancaster's. Did you hear about the airman who climbed outside a bomber to extinguish a fire mid-raid? Watch this story and discover more incredible escapes from death.